Welcome to the Rookie SDR Show, where we talk to leaders within the tech industry who are making an impact. Here's your host, Franklin Albanus.
Welcome to the Rookie SDR Show. I have an amazing guest here today. Nia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here, Franklin.
I was scrolling through TikTok, and that's how I found you. Like your TikTok personality is just amazing. You talk about sales, and then we started following each other on LinkedIn, and that's how we end up here. Nia, so where are you from, by the way?
Story, yeah. So I'm based in the UK, and that is how we are connecting in this modern day and age, isn't it? So it's normally we find each other on LinkedIn, but no, we are going full Gen Z. You found me on TikTok, and that's how we connected that way. And I love it. It's a bit different, isn't it?
I commented in one of your videos and said, hey, how long have you been in sales? And you responded it very quickly. You're like, I've been in sales in this amount of time. And so Nia, just sort of like walk us down through your career path, and how did you end up like in tech sales as an SDR, and now what you're doing now?
So I went to university and I did a molecular biology degree, which is not your typical entry into sales, but the more I speak with salespeople, the more I realize that there isn't a direct route, and the more variation and diversity we can have, the better. So I did my initial degree and went straight into tech sales as an SDR. I was really young when I did that, so I did a bit of a segue and went into physiotherapy, or physical therapy as they call it in the US. I missed so much about the world of sales, and luckily when I was sort of getting that FOMO and really sort of missing what I had, the CEO and founder of this current company that I work for, who I worked for in the past, was setting up my sales coach. So it was the perfect time, our stars aligned, and I got back into sales, and since then have gone through senior SDR roles and are now leading the team at my sales coach.
You're leading your team, but now you are exposing yourself as well and your company within like different social media channels. So, you know, like the sales game always changes in various different industries. Where do you see it going this year in 2024?
So it's a really exciting time for the industry that I'm in. So for a little bit of background, I ultimately help sales leaders and salespeople to be as successful as possible. We know that sales leaders are pulled in so many different directions, they wear so many hats, and ultimately they know that coaching is the best way to support their reps. But they just struggle to find the time to remain consistent. So it's a great time to work in this industry because there's so many thought leaders within sales who want to support their team. They want to develop their reps, and reps are hungry for that development and that progression. So what I see happening this year is more reps investing in their own development, taking their career into their own hands, and sales leaders helping their team to level up. So it's a really great industry to be working in at the minute. And
you mentioned that sales individuals are taking their career and they're making it what they want them to be in the future. When you first started as an SDR, what would you say were the first hardest thing to learn? Was it the calls? Was it the emails? Or was it mostly like social selling?
I think we can all agree that sales development is tough. Like, it's a difficult sort of career to not necessarily break into, but master. And anybody who says that they've mastered it is probably lying. But there's people who have got really great results and can be consistent with that. And I guess the most difficult thing for me, it was probably a great position for me to be in, was the company that I worked for were really supportive and really big on development and coaching. And I had tons of advice. And where I sort of slipped up early on in my career is trying to find the top performer and replicate what they were doing. And the top performer at this company couldn't be further from from me in terms of similarities. He was a 30-year-old man from a different part of England. We have different interests. I was a 21-year-old woman. So me trying to replicate what he was saying was never going to work out. And so there was a bit of a steep learning curve in terms of me taking the advice that I was being given, but really putting my own spin on it. So I guess that was the hardest thing the most difficult pill to swallow and steepest learning curve.
Wow. But I'm sure he had your back of all times. When you made your first cold call, let's say the first one, I would say between 0 to 100. I know was it nerve-wracking for you? I mean, it seems like you have like a great confidence. When you were making like your first cold calls, like what was going through your mind?
So you are right in saying that I am a confident person. Naturally, those nerves will have been there, but I can remember it because I was sat next to my CEO and I thought, nobody's told me like, right, Nia, you need to get on the phones right now, because it was in my first week. It was basically me being like, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm just going to make this first dial, because I'd rather it was on my own back that somebody being like, now start dialing. So I made that first call and it was awful. I got like every objection that you could possibly get, and I just didn't know anything. Despite obviously having great training, you don't know until you start doing. So it was terrible, and I still remember it to this day. But it's a bit of a rite of passage, isn't it? If you have a great first cold call, it's a bit of a false start because you know you're going to get those terrible calls afterwards. So I'm glad I just got that out of the way, and I was just like, do you know what? It's fine. We'll move on.
Have you prospect outside your region before?
Yeah, so predominantly I prospect within the UK, but I've certainly prospected different areas in EMEA and within North America as well. So it's not uncommon for me to be picking up the phone to the US.
What do you say is the difference there?
So I think the jury's definitely out in terms of how different it is to prospect into different regions, and I'm sure there will be some cultural differences. In my opinion, where there's similarities is that either prospecting in the UK or prospecting in the US, that your prospects value an outreach that's relevant to them. Nobody loves getting cold calls. It's you calling them out of the blue. You are disrupting their day. But they can definitely see value when you're picking up the phone for a reason. So that's definitely a similarity. I do also feel, I don't know if this is a bit of a stereotype, that the sales profession is more highly regarded in America as like a skill and something that we learn, whereas there might still be that stigma attached to UK sellers. But I've been very lucky that I sell to salespeople, so they understand the craft. They get the hustle. So I'm lucky that typically when I'm picking up the phone, it's received with somebody who knows what you're doing. So they value that.
Whenever you jump into a new company or a new account in this matter, like when it comes to research, do you go in sites like Crunchbase, G2 Crowd to do a little bit of research about your ideal customer profile, or do you just straight cold call them, cold email them without doing any research at all?
So I think it's getting the balance right. I think research is important because we want to be reaching out to people who want to buy our stuff. We don't want to be just doing a spray and pray to anybody who will listen with the same sort of job title. It's never going to work. What I do is strategic prospecting. So I look at our customers at the minute and who is loving us and the testimonials, and then I'll work out different pillars. So what sort of sector do they belong to? Then I'll look at people who have engaged with our content, engaged with our website, or have possibly worked at companies who we're working with at the minute. So I'm more strategic in that way. And then we can reach out with purpose. Then we can do a little bit more research, like you said, using Crunchbase, Googling news for that company. So it's not just anybody with that job title, anybody in that sort of area that we're reaching out to. It's definitely more strategic.
So with all this layoffs going on within sales in general, actually, we're sort of kind of like getting hit hard during this last couple months in the layoffs. A lot of people, a lot of influencers, I would say, on LinkedIn and various other social media channels saying the sales development role, career itself, it's done. But do you think, in a sense, it's not? It's more, in a sense, evolving now with the help of AI and various other tools. Does the SDR have more time to prospect versus having to do the research, having to do all of that? Because you can put certain things in AI, and AI will sort of help you. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like, if your company can get by without having a team dedicated to specific outreach and filling that top of funnel, then you're thriving. But I know that's not the case for a lot of companies. How are we meant to close deals if we haven't got anybody prospecting? And I know that people rely on full sales cycle sales reps, and that is great. I do believe that you should be prospecting at every level within your sales career. A million other things to do as well. So how are they going to be generating enough opportunities to be hitting revenue goals? So you're so right in saying, like, gone are the days where, honestly, I can remember when I started as an SDR, I spent so much time researching, and a lot of it was irrelevant as well. You can really craft your messaging to an individual based on sort of even 4 to 5 minutes of research for them and their account, and make it relevant to them and make them know that this is not just a message to the masses, without spending hours trawling through data, looking at different websites, that sort of thing, to create something that isn't even relevant to them. So yeah, you're so right. It's got to be a fine balance between the two.
And with everything going on, what is it that you like to do? Like when you're not prospecting, you're not working your career, like how, and what do you recommend to other salespeople to do when they're not working, and instead of worrying about like if did they sign a contract, like how do you offboard after work?
So great question, and I'm all about protecting your peace in sales. And it's interesting that you bring this up as well, because I can remember when we first were messaging on TikTok, I was like, oh, Franklin, yeah, of course we'll jump on a call. I've actually just done a yoga class though, because obviously we're in different time zones. And that's something I wouldn't recommend everyone in the world going and doing yoga, whilst I think it's great for mindset, physical and mental health. It's finding something that you enjoy doing, because if your world is literally go to work, leave work, think about work, lose sleep over it, it's a vicious cycle and you're not going to be fulfilled. You need to think of your role as something that's enabling you to have a great life. So what are you doing afterwards? So for me, I'm very extracurricular. It's spending time with my fiance, going to yoga, going to the gym, staying healthy. And I'm very much a happy body is a happy mind, and happy mind is you're happy at work. And when you enjoy your job, it feels like you're not going to work, and therefore you naturally end up performing better. It's just like a lovely cycle of overachieving. So find what you enjoy and run with it. I love people having hobbies and doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned, because it took me a while to figure out into I will always be an SDR. Like it's amazing, but for me, whenever I was trying to figure out like into sort of, what is it that I want to do long term within my career, and I had to do that balance, right? First of all, I like meeting people, I like talking to people. You can say I'm a very extrovert individual, but for me, it's that I had to find the right balance, because you can be, sometimes there's some bad days. Like there's some bad days that you're on the call, they don't want to pick up, or they just like say negative things to you, even though like you're just doing your job, right? And then certain times that you get bad emails, your videos are not that great. So when it comes to that, you're definitely right. I mean, I want to try yoga myself, but I know for other people, like there are hardest. Like the sales development role itself and sales in general, like there are some good times and there are some bad times. So Nia, for you, like what would you say was the hardest time for you in your sales career?
I think that it's probably the smaller things. There's never been a time in my sales career where I'm literally like, this is horrific, get me out. Even when I left my first tech sales role to do a bit of a career pivot, it was nothing to do with the role. It was more to do with me thinking that I needed to use my initial degree. But times that are difficult are when you're sort of taken off guard and you're confronted by a rude prospect. I don't think that necessarily gets easier, but you do learn how to deal with it better. And something that's really helped me is having my own external personal sales coach. So I can remember a time where I was super excited to reach out to this person. I thought it was a great ICP. There was tons of reasons why I thought it would be a great conversation to have, and it was such a rude conversation, and I came off feeling so deflated and a bit like nobody deserves to be spoken to. I didn't necessarily know how to end that conversation without coming across like rude back or creating more animosity. So I was a bit deflated, and I spoke with my coach, and we ultimately flipped it round so that it was more of a learning experience for me in terms of if that happens again, what I can do differently, and how we're never going to know what's going on in other people's world when we're calling them out of the blue. So that's something that I speak with my coaches and my team about, that we do not get paid enough to be spoken to in a rude way. So just vacate those conversations and treat it like a learning experience. And that's ultimately how I stay positive, even when we're sort of facing that semi-regularly.
And you mentioned that there's certain times negative conversations with prospects or in the role at times. How does that make you feel, and how you learn from that and move forward?
So I guess the main thing to know is that you've got to feel sorry for these people. If they are willing to be negative or rude or make you feel a certain sort of way on like a random person who's called them out the blue, then you have got to feel sorry for them. And I do think the main thing is to remember is you just, like I said, you don't know what's going on in their world. Anything could have just happened and you've just called them out the blue. So try not to take it personally. Whilst it feels personal, they don't know you. They probably don't. Just know like you don't have to stay in that conversation. You can exit it and you don't need to call them again, and you can move on to somebody, and it can be a much more positive conversation the next time round. But I do insist when I speak with other SDRs who are facing that regularly that they don't need to put up with that. They just leave the conversation and move on to the next person.
Exactly. Moving on to the next list, to the next conversation, to the next call. And now here in the next 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, like what is next for you in your sales career? Because you're doing amazing. Like you are putting out videos out there. You are helping other SDRs. You know, you're growing. So like, what is next for you? You will say.
Well, thanks so much. So I'm in a really exciting position because I started with my sales coach as the first non-founding hire. So with that has come really exciting growth. I was promoted recently to head up the SDR team, and that's where I see my career going. Like I love helping other SDRs to be as successful as possible. I coach other SDRs to be as successful as possible, those skills, and helping people to love the career that they're in and really sort of foster that creativity. So I see myself with my sales coach because it is so exciting. As we grow, I'll be growing with them, and it's just like I said, it's so exciting to be the first SDR and now heading up the team, and the sky's the limit.
Exactly. And I guess and if you could narrow it down into 1 minute, what does your company do and what do you do there?
Sure. So my sales coach came about because we know that sales leaders know that sales coaching is the best way to support their rep. It's the number one way to help them to develop, progress, and overcome any challenges in their way. But ultimately, sales leaders are too busy to dedicate that time to coaching their reps consistently. So we provide reps with the coaching that they deserve and that they need to be as successful as possible. So we match them with their expert sales coach based on their strengths, weaknesses, and goals. So my role at my sales coach is to head up the SDR team, to help the SDR team to be as successful as possible, and find those people, those sales leaders who need our help, those sales leaders who want to help their team but just are time strapped and can't do that. So that is my job.
And if any sales leader or any SDR that kind of needs that assistant, that guidance, that coaching, how can they reach out to you?
I mean, it's very easy. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Nia Woodhouse at My Sales Coach. TikTok if you fancy it, which is at Nia in Sales. Or you can drop me an email, Nia at My Sales Coach, and I would love to chat.
Amazing. Well, everyone, this is it for the show. Nia, thank you so much for coming into the Rookie SDR show and giving out that amazing advice that I know a lot of sales leaders will take. I know a lot of SDRs will take. It's been awesome having you as the first guest, actually, in 2024. So it was a privilege having you. And do you have any final words out there?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you, Franklin. And I think this is just a testament to look into new ways to being creative with your prospecting, because we found each other on TikTok. So why not other people start prospecting on TikTok? Because it's a place to be.
Exactly. Well, everyone, this was amazing. And we'll see you in the next episode.